Hi, everyone. We'll be starting in a few minutes. We'll just give it just a couple more minutes for more people to join, and then we'll kick off. Okay, I think let's start. Welcome, good morning, good afternoon. I don't know where everyone is joining us from. It would be great to know. Actually, if you could type in the chat where you're joining from, that would be really, really nice to see where everyone is joining from. I'll start. So yeah, if you're joining us from anywhere in the world, please let us know in the chat box. My name is Eunice Pagumabo. I'm a director and gender and digital inclusion consultant at ATBN, who are organizing this event in partnership with AfriConEU. We're going to hear a little bit more about the AfriConEU project and the work it's doing to support the development of digital innovation hubs in Africa and building synergies between Europe and Africa's digital ecosystems. Just to inform you that we are recording the event today with AfriConEU. We're really about building a community of practice of innovation hubs, startup support organization, entrepreneur support organization, digital skills organizations to learn from each other. So we'd like to record this so that anyone who hasn't been able to join us today will be able to catch up on this. I see we have Nigeria, we have Greece, we have UK, Portugal on there. Please keep them coming. It would be really nice to see the representation on here. Just a quick run through for our program today. We have a great lineup. So first of all, we will hear from Tanya Moreira, who is going to be introducing the AfriConEU project, like I mentioned. And then we will be hearing from Gospat Chagula, MBE. For those of you in the UK, you will know that that's a big deal. But he's spent a lot of time supporting entrepreneurship support organizations, launching accelerator programs, and he's going to share his lessons on building strategies for sustainability and impact. So we're looking forward to hearing his war stories from the front line, supporting entrepreneurs and really understanding how do we make it work and how do we balance between keeping our programs alive, sustainable, and making a difference and keeping our purpose as our campus. And then we'll be joined by Gideon, who is the CEO and co-founder of Hyperspace in Ghana, and also a partner on the AfriConEU project, who will be giving us the African perspective. And really what we want to do is take these learnings from both continents and understand how we can live as innovation leaders who can lead with purpose and create impact at scale. So I believe now, without further ado, I will hand over to Tanya to do the introduction for AfriConEU.
Thank you, Eunice. Thank you, everybody, for joining the session. I'm really happy to see all of you and in this session. And for this presentation, as usual, we have some slides which I would like to share with you. And please, while I'm presenting, if you have some questions, just speak up because I will not see you. So speak, or if you write on the chat, Eunice or the other colleagues, please let me know. And okay, so you are probably already seeing the screen. Okay, so as Eunice said, my name is Tânia Moreira. I'm from Innova, based in Portugal. Innova is the coordinator of AfriConEU, of this great project, which main goal is to create the first trans-continental networking academy to support African and European digital innovation hubs in specific capacity building, knowledge sharing, networking, collaboration, joint projects, and venture development. Three main goals guide this project. The first one, facilitate knowledge and experience sharing. The second, drive the development of mutually beneficial partnerships. And third one, support the creation of collective projects to boost the digital economy, empowering youth and human and fostering innovation and growth. So these three main goals guide our project. The project is implemented by a wide consortium, as you can see in this map. We have partners from Europe and also from Africa. So Portugal, United Kingdom, Italy, Slovenia, Greece, Uganda, Tanzania, Nigeria, and Ghana. The project is divided in 5 main phases. Currently, we are in the third one, the rollout, implementation, and assessment. This phase is focused on the academy, such as this activity that you are currently participating on. And so the networking academy, as you can see in this slide, is split in 2 main flagship programs. The first one more dedicated to capacity building activities, and the second one more to partnership development, so to say, networking, partnership creation. And each of these flagship program is composed of different activities, of course. The first one, the capacity building, is composed of 12 local workshops, 20 webinars, and 8 master classes, while the second flagship is composed of 1 brokerage event, 4 boot camps, and 1 capitalization event. We, through these different activities, we aim to involve a wide range of stakeholders, as you can see, policymakers, digital innovation hubs, startups, and we are targeting especially women and youth. The 2 flagship programs focus on specific thematics. The capacity building focus on 4 specific thematics, and these thematics were defined, selected based on a previous study that we have conducted during the project. We have contacted different stakeholders, assessed their needs, their interests, and then we defined these thematics. So for the capacity building, we have these 4 main thematics. The first one, business development models and multi-actor approach. The second, technology transfer of innovative technologies. The third thematic, startups financial support. And the fourth thematic, digital and entrepreneurial skills development. Each of these thematics are implemented through different activities, as you can see. So these different thematics, these different activities, they were designed, they were thought in a kind of program. So the networking academy, the whole networking academy as a conductive line. And so by attending all the activities, you will approach, you will learn a kind of a line of thought, and you can learn a very linked approach. The second flagship program, the Trans-Continental Partnership, is approaching also for thematics. The first one, towards a common digital market and a connected startup ecosystem. The second, digitalization jobs for the 21st century. The third, business and investment opportunities in the African market. And the fourth, scouting digital entrepreneurs and startups in the African market. Finally, we are almost in the final slides. I would like to share with you the timeline, the calendar of our academy, which was launched last month on May 2022, and will last until October next year. As you can see, almost all during all sorry, I was trying to push back. Okay. As you can see, we will have activities in almost all the months during the next year. So we have a good range of activities, and we are happy to share with you all these experiences, to have all these amazing speakers, and to share this with you. The next activities will already happen next month on July. A masterclass, 2 webinars, and a local workshop at this moment in Ghana. We have local workshops in the different African countries. So pay attention, because we have a lot of activities that probably will be of your interest. And to attend, the academy activities are free. We only need the registration to control the access to the activities, and also for a matter of our internal organization. But the activities are free, and we would be happy to see all of you in there. And of course, if you have some questions, please just let us know, and we will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And with this, I end my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish you a very good session. As Eunice said, any question, let us know by writing on the chat, or just by speaking. We will be glad to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tanya, for that introduction. And I guess just to add, like you've seen, we've really created activities which are focused on supporting the people, the actors who are supporting entrepreneurship and digital innovation, because we believe that investing in our capacity will have a knock-on effect, because usually a lot of the activities out there are targeted towards the entrepreneurs, the startups themselves, and there's not a lot out there, particularly for us who are supporting entrepreneurs to just learn from each other, to build up our own skills. So we're really excited about this, and which actually brings me on to the next part of our program today, which is to introduce our next speaker, Gospat Chagula, MBE. Gospat has dedicated his career basically to supporting entrepreneurs, from youth entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, environmental and green tech entrepreneurs, helping them build better business models, helping them access investment. And he's really been in this game a really long time. He's currently the co-founder of the Startup Discovery School that is really helping to set up acceleration programs for diverse funders. They're working with the UK government, they're advising the UK government. So I'm really, really excited. I've known Gospat a long time, but when we had this session come up and I saw that topic, I couldn't think of anyone better to lead from this, and anyone who would be very open and candid for the learnings and the lessons learned. So I really think we're all in for a treat here. And yeah, please join me in welcoming and handing over to Gospat.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Eunice, for the introduction. It's really good to be back. I've been involved with the AfriConEU project before, and I feel this is like the return home. So it's really good to meet everyone here, and I'm open to, if you want to have any questions, I'll leave my contact details as well as my social channels so you can reach out. I do love this topic because when we talk about supporting entrepreneurs, there's a great myth that entrepreneurship it just happens. It just happens. It's combustible, it's random and uncontrolled, and there is an element of that. But I definitely believe that strong support structures and conscious support structures are the way. And everyone in the room here, as a leader of digital innovation hub or being involved with any digital innovation hub has a key role to play. And the conversation we're going to have today, and hopefully get some questions from you guys, is really about how do we make this sustainable? It's one of the challenges of the great challenges of the sector, that for this good work ongoing, it's often difficult to measure in terms of truly long-term impact, but also how do we ensure that we don't go hungry in the process, that this is that we build flourishing ecosystems. And I'm glad to have that conversation today. So let me just share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see it. Let me just take a bit of a step back. Okay, brilliant. So yeah, today we're going to talk about balancing impact and sustainability. I'm going to do my best to keep to time. So I'm going to set myself a little alarm. So don't be alarmed if you do hear a little beep in the background. But I'm going to have about 10 minutes and I'm going to leave 5 minutes for questions. And if I get no questions, I'm just going to pick on people or just riff for a few minutes. So yes, my name is Gosbert Chigula. As Eunice said, I've spent the better part of my career working either for startups or working to support and champion the growth of startups, as well as working to include more people in the conversation, to ensure that founders come from all backgrounds, not just a privileged few. Just in terms of my kind of track, I've worked with African Technology Business Network as a director, recently got an MBE award from the Queen. Well, not from the Queen, but, in terms of the establishment here in the UK government, on behalf of Services to Business as of last week. So I've spent the last week changing my name slightly in official engagements. I'm also work with the UK Department of Business and Industrial Strategy as an advisor, and really again looking at how, in the context of the UK, how can the UK government firstly create a thriving business environment, but also how can they ensure that some of the best entrepreneurial talent has a pathway to the UK? And with all the political changes, that's been very relevant. I'm also a co-founder of Startup Discovery School, and I've worked in a number of accelerators and programs both here in the UK and also abroad. But just in terms of what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk a lot, obviously, about supporting entrepreneurs as the leaders and employees, operators of digital innovation hubs. We all know that ultimately the lifeblood of any hub or any programs, and I will reference some of the programs which are listed here on the screen in front of you. We'll talk about my time at Extra Velocities, which was a clean tech accelerator, current work with Ktm Global Alliance on a project focused on Africa, Central Research Laboratory. We're currently working with HSBC on a program, SAP Global and National Highways. And I think I took some time when putting together this presentation to reflect on my learnings. So how do we balance all of the programs listed here? Had different elements in them, but they were all focused on some impact. Now, one thing I would say with regard to all these programs is that they all articulated impact differently, and the motivations for starting the program were very diverse. And I think what we have to talk about today is really about understanding, firstly, what are we trying to achieve in some of the programs in terms of achieving impact and sustainability, but what is the underlying motivations of those that fund the program, and how can we make that work for us ultimately? Now, when we think about acceleration and innovation models and the different things you could do, we can call them innovation programs, we can call them incubators. I've heard all sorts. I've heard creator hubs. I even saw recently, I think this week, LinkedIn have launched something called the Creator Academy. And I was like, oh, what's that? And it's an accelerator. Well, they've kind of rebranded it for LinkedIn. So we can call this what we want, but there are generally several kind of models which we know are out there. We've got acceleration. Now, depending if you're based on the continent, if you're in Africa, what can be accelerated differs to what will be considered acceleration in Europe or America or wherever. We've got, obviously, acceleration is the acceleration of an existing business. We've got incubation, which ultimately is idea stage businesses. I've heard of pre-incubation as well, but let's call it incubation. We've got venture building. I've seen, for example, Founders Factory in South Africa. They take talented people, work with them, perhaps on a pre-decided idea, and help them build a business. We've got challenge response. So organizations now defining what are the key challenges we face and how can we work with entrepreneurs in order to solve those challenges. We've also got skills and resource deployment. So that's more similar to challenge response, but ultimately large organizations looking to deploy the internal resources, so the resource and knowledge of staff into startups. And finally, we've got corporate innovation, which is a big kind of catch-all term, which involves corporates or large organizations, both sponsoring, supporting directly, and perhaps even investing in early stage innovations. Now, for all of the digital hub leaders in the room, We're all familiar with these. And I think it's good that we have this menu in front of us because it at least sets the parameters of what's possible. Now, the next step is understanding, I'd also say, motivations. And it's important that we know where we stand. So what's the reality of the conditions we're in? When we think about innovation and acceleration model and motivation, I group them into four. We've got philanthropic and public relations, often called corporate social responsibility. So someone funding programs on the basis of a philanthropic effort. We've got innovation engagement. So a company seeking to engage with innovators for their own benefit. We've got investment and financial returns, so venture capitalists or early funders who want financial returns and will fund your programs. And finally, we've got impact focus, which for some of you in the room, and I've worked on similar programs, will be things such as development aid, perhaps development funding. Now, I think this is so important we start the conversation here. Both what are the models, so what's possible, which is an honest conversation, and then why are we receiving the funding? Because why our programs are funded will ultimately dictate what we can do. Now, if I give some examples of some of the programs I've worked on, I worked on this a few months ago with Startup Discovery School, SAP Global. So SAP are one of the world's biggest software companies. I call them, they're a company that are everywhere but nowhere. So they do a lot of technical infrastructure all over the world. They ran a program last year, was focused on the UK, but runs in South Africa, the United States, and Brazil. And ultimately, SAP was offering its consultants, so teams of consultants, up to 5 consultants, to provide consulting hours to 10 Black-owned businesses in the United Kingdom. Now, they developed work plans and clear deliverables were agreed. The whole focus of this was to redress racial disparity. So that's an example of skills, resource, and deployment. I'm happy to talk more about that project at the end. If I take another example, the Ktm Global Alliance. So Ktm Global Alliance is run with the United Kingdom's Foreign Office, so it's Department for Foreign Affairs. That is ultimately looking to bridge partnerships between the UK and organizations in Nigeria, Kenya, and I believe South Africa. Now, if I think about what do you actually get if you participate in a program, that program is about providing pilots with corporate partners on the continent in Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa, and startups. The startups must address one of the corporate partners' problems. And those problems are generally in recycling, net zero, and waste management, and agricultural efficiency. Someone needs to go on mute. Is that me? No. So yes, could someone hit mute? It's a bit loud in the background. Brilliant. Now, if I take the motivations, I think, so the one last program is X to Velocity. So the program I ran about 3 to 4 years ago, that was purely run from a financial returns perspective because we were funded by a venture capitalist. Now, that was an accelerator focused on supporting startups, tackling issues around climate change and traffic congestion in cities. They were offering early stage £15,000 grant for participants. And our investment partner also offered up to £100,000 in pre-seed funding for selected companies. I want to be clear, not everyone got the £100,000. That sounds like that is a lot of money. We worked with more than 60 startups across 3 years. So we've got these 3 kind of buckets of examples. I've got skills, resource, and deployment. We've got corporate innovation, I guess, from KTN, and obviously investment and financial returns and impact. So there were like kind of 3 examples of the programs that I've worked with. Now, if we think about some of these programs, and I'll talk, for example, SAP I've highlighted, it was impact focused, but ultimately philanthropic. If I think about KTN, impact focused, clearly. Now, there is a political element because it's government funded, so the UK government has a stake in the program. And X to Velocity's investment and financial returns. I think it's important that we're honest about what are the motivations, as I said at the start. Now, what I'm going to do now is break down almost the, I guess, pros and cons of each funding stream in terms of, as we seek to achieve sustainability, what are the opportunities, but also what are the drawbacks from each stream as I see it. Now, when I think of the first one, I think of when I think of philanthropic, I think of a give back to society, often seen as a give back. I've worked with many funders who've had this. May or may not be underpinned by specific measurements of time or hours. I think there's an advantage here in the sense of, all of you want to get on and run the programs you run. You don't want to be bogged down with reporting. Reporting is probably the pain that we all experience. Donors may be motivated by wider policy goals or personal lived experience. I've worked with many funders who their initiative has been started because a business leader has a specific interest in a topic area and wants to do something. I think that's great. I think that allows us to get on. In terms of drawbacks, and I'm sure we've all been there, a lack of focus leads to operational problems further down the line. So that question for your funders, what do they actually want to achieve? If they can't answer that, you know there's going to be trouble 6 months down the line when you're presenting results and someone says, this is not what we envisioned. Also, trouble defining what good looks like. A lot of early stage programs struggle with this. What does a good early stage startup look like? I'd argue there's not really an answer to that question, but we've had a lot of battles back and forth with funders, especially those who approach from a more philanthropic angle. Thirdly, a lack of engagement by the funder may result in a perceived lack of credibility in the part of the program. So again, maybe a lack of measurement, lack of clear deliverables results in a lack of credibility. You know, this is something we do, but ultimately, perhaps no one at the, from a funding perspective, that will hit you later further down the line when perhaps you seek to renew partnerships, etc. If you look at the next stream is going to be innovation engagement. So an organization who is openly seeking to engage in the innovation ecosystem through your digital innovation hubs. So they want to get a look at some of the upcoming and exciting startups perhaps you're working with. I think the good points are the funder has a vested interest in the wider innovation/startup ecosystem. It could be a corporate, for example. This may or may not be underpinned by specific measurements. So there may be measurements, there may not be. Great, allows you to get on. And also the motivations. Now, the drawback with innovation engagement, especially this funding stream, is often this innovation theater. The idea that, and I'm sure we've all been there, a company or an organization tells you ultimately they wish to become more innovative, work with some of the startups or work with your hub to become a more innovative organization. But perhaps that ambition is not matched through any reality. It's ultimately just for show, which can be a problem in terms of long-term commitment. Internal politics may strangle the process. When thinking about innovation engagement, especially from large organizations, you're dealing with a large organization and often the digital innovation hub is a lot smaller. Internal politics may strangle both the process, but also your program, because all of us here understand we're only as good as the startups give us feedback, or the people we work with. Also, unclear motivations may result in frustration for all, not speakers, that should be startups, in particular participating entrepreneurs. So an unclear expectations for companies that say, hey, I want to engage with your hubs. A lack of motivation ultimately can result in frustration. And I think ultimately the frustration is felt by the startup founders. Investment and financial returns. I've worked on programs which some have been privately funded. Now, I've heard a lot of people tell me that that's the golden ticket. You want private funding because it allows you a bit more flexibility. And I do agree partially, but I definitely think there are some clear opportunities. Funder has vested interest, which is fantastic, underpinned by clear financial allocations and goals. When we worked on exit velocities, we were very, very clear on what does good look like, because we were told this is the investments that we're looking to make. The startup must have this. We're motivated, it was clearly motivated, so motivated by wider business goals and trends, clearly sees the potential in engaging with startups. However, drawbacks, very little space for those who aren't ready yet. Definitely understand in the African context, the funder needs to understand exactly the challenges perhaps a startup based in, let's say, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya faces. Without that understanding, there's always going to be a misalignment in expectations. And often, secondly, is often a lack of diversity, as that is sacrificed for results now. So working on privately funded programs, typically you find if you're any ambition to be more inclusive, does take a hit, because you're judged on what results have you got now. How can you get the highest quality entrepreneurs, startups into your program? Now, for some of you working on various parts of the continent, your goals may be focused more so on ensuring an inclusive startup ecosystem, not necessarily one which produces results now, but often I find an investment or financial returns motivation will result in that, a lack of diversity as you get squeezed to deliver results instantaneously. In terms of impact focus, so again, good motivations. Funder has vested interest, clear commitment to a defined theory of change and impact strategy, and then the commitment by the funder, especially those who are focused on impact. Their commitment may unlock further opportunities further down the line, and you have a real opportunity to position yourself as an expert. In terms of just drawbacks, very little space for those perhaps who aren't ready yet, can lack credibility beyond the wider impact sphere. I've heard a lot of hub leaders mention this. We do some great work, we're impact focused, but in terms of our innovations or startups going to the next level, we're perceived as lacking credibility. And changing priorities can make funding uncertain. We see this a lot in terms of some of the government work we've done. In the UK is currently going through a particular political moment, which has had an impact on where innovation funding goes, especially that which is focused on the continent. which is changed from perhaps impact to more export or import opportunities. There are some key questions. I would say there are no answers to this, but there are some key questions which we do need to ask ourselves. And I think every digital innovation hub leader here, or someone who works in a digital innovation hub, needs to ask themselves. Firstly, how pragmatic are you willing to be? All of us have a duty to the innovators we work with and the wider ecosystems we are part of. How much are you willing to give in order to ensure long-term sustainability? I think that's a question for the team, or at least the hub leaders to answer. Like, how long do you see your hub not just existing for? I didn't mean to say that, but how much are you willing to give in order to make this work? Secondly, do you understand the nature of the work sector? Can you accept that? There are limitations to the hub ecosystem in the sense that most of the revenue or income does come from funding or external funders. And I think that's a reality which is unlikely to change, especially if you're working on the continent in the near future. I can say there is an increase of funding from the UK government for Africa-based innovations and startups in digital innovation hubs. But that funding comes with clear expectations, especially aligning politically with the UK government. Also customer-centric from day one. What opportunities do you have? And that links to a fourth point. What are the commercial opportunities you do have at your disposal? What are the playbooks, consulting, conferences? How can you position your digital innovation hub as a leader in your specific field? I am running out of time, but I think this is so important. What happens in Kenya is very different from what happens in Ghana, what happens in Liberia, wherever it be, Cote d'Ivoire. How can you position yourself, or how can you double down on what makes you unique? Someone was at a conference last week on the launch of the Ghana Unity DAO in Accra. And I thought that was very interesting that in terms of the ecosystem in Ghana, or at least some influences within the ecosystem, that's the route they've taken. So what makes you special? How can you position yourself as an expert? How can you own the field, perhaps in partnership with others? What knowledge do you have that is valuable to outsiders? Now, in terms of my learnings in this space, it's really been about aggressive business models work best. This should be reflected in your team as a digital innovation hub. So obviously delivery of programs and initiatives are a priority, of course, but who's leading business development? Who's out there consistently looking for opportunities for you to commercialize your operation? Secondly, monetizing your secret sauce or expertise. That expertise is usually on location. So what's unique about your location? What's your specialism? What lived experience does your digital innovation hub have? How can you lean into that? Thirdly, philanthropic funding comes with understandable challenges which are unavoidable, as I've said before. And lastly, what context do you operate in? Again, thinking about where you are, what's the context you operate in? For example, the United Kingdom right now, the context it operates in is that it's currently left the European Union, which means that there's an extra focus on the export or knowledge transfer of startups from the UK to the continent for partnerships. We can't get away from that context. The question for you, a lot of the innovation hub leaders, what context do you operate in? What are the opportunities? How can you align with other geographies and locations? And that I have gone overboard, but that does conclude my presentation today with regard to balancing sustainability and impact. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you do need to reach out to me directly, I'm at Gosbert across all channels, the benefits of having an unusual name. And lastly, you can get to me at gosbert@startupdiscoveryschool.com. It's a long email, but yeah, feel free to nudge me on social media. I do respond. So has anyone got any questions? Anything they wish to share? Eunice, you've popped back up.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for that. That was really, really good. I have a couple of questions to lead. Anyone else, please be prepared to speak up and ask your question, or you could type it into the chat if that's easier. But I wanted to first of all ask you, Gosbert, when you were talking about the secret sauce, like understanding what is our specialism, what's our competitive advantage, basically, was what you're saying. Yeah. Could you contextualize us by telling us what's your secret sauce? What do you see as your, when you're positioning yourself as the partner for the government or a corporate to partner with you to lead an acceleration program?
Of course. So something we've begun to double down on is really our experience in impact work and environmental work and ESG. So we ran a lot of clean tech accelerators. And what we found, typically, there is a big push from the UK government to be more inclusive in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So what we've often said is that we work at the intersection of let's say, impact in environmental and clean tech work, and also diversity. Because typically what we find is that solutions built in the kind of sustainability space, clean tech space, in the United Kingdom / Europe are typically run by the most privileged. So it's a very small strata of entrepreneurs who typically lead those initiatives. And we've gone to push that because we realize there is an agenda that can give us an advantage. The fact that we can leverage some of our experience working on the continent, that we have access to entrepreneurs in Africa, Europe, Asia, and as well. So that's really what, now that aligns nicely with some of the agendas we found from a government perspective, because again, they're focused on export, knowledge transfer, inclusivity, and diversity. So yeah, I do think this does, yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so you're saying, you know, your secret sauce, I would say, is geography-wise, you know, you can work in the UK and you've also worked across Africa. You have that. Sector-wise, there's clean tech environment, and then you add in a specialism around bringing diversity, and that's kind of makes you unique. I wanted to challenge the rest of the group. Anyone else out there, could you maybe type in the chat what you think your secret sauce is, thinking about the elements that Gospert has given us: geography, maybe sector, and then a specialism that you bring that's quite unique, because I think it's worth thinking about. And obviously, if it's a bit much for you to process right now, feel free not to, but it would be cool if 1 or 2 people could share that, because I think that's really, really key. And I'm actually going back, and I think I'll have to sit down with a pen and paper and think about that for myself. But maybe for me, thinking about it is inclusion from a gender point of view. So bringing in inclusion, similarly geography, and I'm talking about ATBN here. We bring that gender inclusion angle. We run a lot of female focused, and we have specialty around understanding the barriers and challenges specifically for female entrepreneurs in digital innovation. We bring geography-wise, connecting Europe and Africa. So with the fact we've worked in the UK and over 6 countries in Africa. And the specialism, I would say, we have what we call a systems thinking approach. We are always thinking about, we as ATBN decided we are no longer going to run directly an accelerator specific targeting entrepreneurs. We target the ecosystem. So we want to be part of projects like AfriConEU, which are supporting actors in the ecosystem. So if I would say a specialism is that we are ecosystem systems thinking focused. So we want to be an accelerator supporting the accelerators, or building capacity and learning and knowledge around how to do it better, learning the ecosystem. I've done well. Thank you. Anyone else want to have a go, maybe in the chat? And I didn't prepare this before, guys. This is literally me learning from, you know, from Gospert right now. Yeah, do you want to have a go?
Yes, definitely. So it's important what Godfrey shared, that there are a number of focus or focal areas that a digital innovation hubs or entrepreneurs can focus on. However, wherever the source is coming from, does it align with what you ultimately want to achieve? And are you in a position to take that on? Because that's from where I'm coming from in Africa, that has been the major challenge. Because, you know, most of the digital innovation hubs, for instance, they are driven by young ones that feel that innovators need support. So I usually say that some of them are even startups trying to support startups. And so they are looking everywhere for financial support. But whether it's a company, whether it's a donor agency, whether it's an individual, a philanthropist coming in, what is the person's purpose? What's the direction they want to push things? If they do not align with the goals of the hubs or the startup, then everything is thrown off gear. And after the end of that project that is undertaken, then the digital innovation hub or the startup need to refine himself. So it becomes a cycle. You chase one project with a different focus, then you need to find yourself and chase another one. And so at the end of the day, after many years of struggling, if you are asked of what you have been able to achieve, you can't boldly point to anything.
Yeah.
It just becomes a survival strategy. So those insights shared, they are very important and very true, which also applies to the African continent.
Yeah. And you know, you're right. Again, I think there are structural issues here, and you're right. And the funding, and I talked about the political context. I can see from a funder perspective how development aid is now being perhaps rebranded in a sense of it's now seen as, okay, we're going to use it to encourage knowledge transfers and, you know, export opportunities for startups. And that, you're right, there is a lot of chasing. And the question I asked was, how pragmatic are you willing to be? Because I think that's an honest question. And Gideon, you poke at it like, we need to survive. Like, there is no tomorrow if we can't survive beyond like next week, you know, if money runs out. So I do definitely acknowledge what you said, that there are huge structural issues which mean there's a reality we can't get away from as well.
But I also think both of what you're saying then really reinforces why it's important, you as the hub leader, as the person creating a program, that you know your purpose, you know your specialism, which is, you know, what Ghost told us, think about geographically what makes you unique, sector-wise, what makes you unique, what is the specialism you have, and then try and follow that. Because like you said, Gideon, if you just go chasing the money, you know, like Gospat says, he specializes around clean tech, energy, he's built specialism in that. And the next time he sees funding for something completely different, it's like, you know, and then he's like, oh, let's chase that money. Then suddenly it's like, oh, it's not your specialism anymore. And I know it's really difficult to maintain that track, but I think that if you cultivate what makes you unique, ultimately you win. I feel like I have moved us on to the next item of the agenda already. That wasn't my intention. I was just trying to like process something I thought that was really fundamental that Gospat has highlighted. So I'm not trying to crowd out any questions. Did anyone have any specific questions for Gospat before we move on? Because we've basically already started the next item, which is the panel discussion between myself, Gospat, and Gideon. But before we continue, are there any questions from anyone? I don't think I've seen any coming in the chat.
Yeah, if I may, I would like, if Gospat would be available, if you could develop a bit the idea that it is good to have aggressive business models. What do you mean by this?
So I mean, again, this is survival for those that I recognize the issues of survival, that we can't think about beyond tomorrow. So often, and I've been there, when we're leading digital innovation hubs, we have a relationship with our funders who ultimately, but the danger with those funders is always that they are linked to political agendas and political changes. You know, in the UK, the last 5 years in the UK, foreign policy has completely shifted 360 degrees. You know, it's gone from a member of the European Union to suddenly this, you know, independent of the European Union, and have perhaps its own foreign policy, which has changed everything. Now, when I say aggressive, I mean overtly commercial. So from day one, there is a focus. And again, this is, I think should be reflected in the composition of any team, that there is someone who owns the business development opportunities. There is someone, and there is a conscious effort to look at what you can commercialize. Now, is there 100% sustainability in a sense, or to generate 100% owner-free revenue? Maybe that's a different generation. I think maybe that's a different generation. But I definitely think from day one, those conversations should be had. I don't see any other way. There should be someone at least with an understanding of the context you operate in, who is strictly commercial. Digital innovation hub leaders, I understand that you are meant to have 10 jobs, but definitely I think there should be someone who ultimately owns how are we going to generate revenue consistently over the next year, 12 months, 18 months. And I think that person is often different from the hub leader. They're working in partnership.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Feel free to just jump in if you do. And even as we go along, guys, just type your question into chat if you're in a noisy place, so that's just easier for you. But I guess, so we are not behind on time. I would like to move on to the next bit, which we've basically already started, which is the panel discussion, just to think about some of the things that Gospat has mentioned from his learnings and experience leading these entrepreneurship support programs. And I would like to welcome officially Gideon, who is the CEO and co-founder of Hyperspace in Kumasi, Ghana. I know you'd already sort of started on the feedback and giving us African context, but could you just briefly introduce yourself formally, and then we will continue the discussion.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, the name is Gideon Briffle, and we are running an innovation hub in the second capital of Ghana, Kumasi, called Hyperspace. What we do is to support startups to adopt technology, either to scale their businesses or to improve on their business operations. That's really the focus. And you said I should give a feedback on what was shared?
No, so I wanted you to introduce yourself first, and then we will kick off.
Okay.
Right. I don't know if you noticed that when you said Kumasi, you got a big smile from Gospert. He has a connection to Kumasi.
Okay.
He spent, I think, was it a year there?
Yeah.
As a young man. But anyway, so Gideon, you had started a bit talking about some of the challenges digital innovation hubs face within the African context. And you talked about that following the money, and then you drift and you lose sight of your purpose, you lose sight of your secret sauce, you lose, what makes you unique, because you just need to survive. What is the solution to that? I mean, obviously a solution would be a big fat check falls from the sky for all amazing digital innovation hub leaders, but it doesn't necessarily work like that. And we've heard from Gospert about make sure you have somebody on your team who is focused on business development and how do we make money as a hub. But what is your advice for avoiding this losing sight of our purpose and our strategy because we're just following every funding that there is?
Yeah, I think Gospert rightly said, if you cannot survive today, why is the future important? So as for surviving, we should survive. But the point is that the cycle of chasing has also not been beneficial. It hasn't helped in any way. It only leaves us handicapped and very vulnerable. And so as hubs, I will just re-echo what Gospert said. The purpose of the hub should be built around the strength that either the leaders or the staff, the consultants working for the innovation hub has. If their purpose is built around it, then they have the capacity to drive it. That is one way to position themselves. And there are many other things that could be done in addition to the accelerator or incubation programs that we run. So, for instance, if we have a physical space, we can begin to think about, in terms of commercialization, what else can be done with the space. At Hyperspace, we did this. We moved to a bigger space. That was a bold move because we didn't know how we are going to find the monies to be paying the huge rent. But then we thought about finding a location that is very lucrative for even bigger businesses, more matured businesses to want to get spaces in there. And the place is full up. So now we are not bothered about the space because the tenants there, the matured businesses are paying for rent. But that also allows us to also rent out the event spaces for other big businesses that we want to host their mini conferences, meetings, and stuff like that. So at least that is catering for the monthly remunerations that will go to our core staff. And that allows us the opportunity to also focus on developing other paid events and being able to advertise it to the right people so that they can attend. Because that's the major challenge for most innovation hubs in Africa. If the event is not free, usually it's difficult to get people coming. And so you need some aggressive salespeople that will be able to convince people to realize the value for it. And I think that leads to my next point. The services that we create should have value. for the people, because I think Gosbert mentioned that it should be customer-centric. We know our focal customers, and we need to be able to meet their need. If we are not providing them any value, or if it becomes repetitive, because in the ecosystem, what we see is repetitive training opportunities, repetitive workshops. If that is the way and it is not adding any value to them, then they are not interested in coming. So if we're able to put these in place, then definitely we'll be able to survive.
That's some really good advice there.
Can I add something, Eunice?
Yeah, of course.
Last week, I went to Qatar, and obviously Qatar's in the Middle East. I was future host of the World Cup, and I visited like 4 accelerators in Qatar. They have the complete opposite problem. So the Gulf states the populations are small, and they're generally very wealthy. So to be a Qatari citizen means you get government subsidies, you're effectively. So I visited the accelerators and they were empty. And when I asked, where is everyone? There's like, no one comes. But the facilities were amazing. Eunice, I kid you not, the facilities were beautiful, glass, beautiful glass buildings. They had innovation hubs, but completely empty. And also the problem they face in the Gulf is a lack of private capital. So there's a lot of everything is government funded. But again, that comes into incentives. There's no real incentive for innovators. And I find it interesting that it's almost got the opposite problem. Perhaps a lack of funding, but people doing a lot on very little. Whereas perhaps it's almost the opposite problem, in a region next to the continent where they've got a very, very different kind of issue. And I think Gideon's right. The idea, where is the value you provide? Where is that? And I think it's worth saying that I do empathize with everyone in the room, because you are facing multiple challenges all at once.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot now. Thank you both for that, on sustainability. And I think Yolanda put it really well, but when you said, there's, if you can't survive, then even talking about purpose and impact doesn't make sense, because you won't be there. So that's why we've kind of spent quite a bit of time talking about sustainability and models, and how do we get that funding, but how do we build our own sustainability models. And we heard from Gideon sharing some of the stuff they've done at Hyperspace around, strategically locating their positions. And I know, Gideon, you actually have a few more examples on that. But now I want to talk about purpose, right? So, the title of this session is Purpose-Driven Workshop, and we're really about a lot of us as people who support. I don't know if this is true. This might be just me. I don't know if there's anyone who gets into the field of supporting entrepreneurs and innovation who does it to become rich, because if you do it, you may be in for a very, very long, it's not the place you're going to make your, $1 million check. You will work with people who will make them, but you yourself, I don't know. But a lot of us in the space are driven by making a difference, by impact, by seeing how innovations that we support, that we help to create can impact lots of lives. But like you said, that doesn't pay the bill. So how do we balance that purpose, that impact? But before I go over to Gospel and Gideon, I wanted to have a question for the audience. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to be a purpose-driven digital innovation hub? Or for you, what do you see as your purpose? And maybe, I could start and say, and please type in the chat. We're not hearing a lot from you. I feel like maybe I need to talk less so that we hear more from you. Audience, please type in the chat, or unmute and speak. What do you see as your purpose as a digital innovation hub leader, or as an entrepreneurship support or innovation ecosystem support provider? I would say, if I were to start, for me, what drives me is seeing inclusion in who creates innovation, particularly seeing more women, because I feel that when you empower women, it just trickles down to everything. It means education, healthcare, finance, and the thing with technology is who creates it has a direct impact on what the solutions, the impact that the solutions can have. So what my purpose is and what really drives me is empowering a more, more inclusive innovation ecosystem in Africa. But what is your purpose as a Digital Innovation Hub leader? A question for you, audience, and maybe I'll also actually start with our panelists, Gospat and Gideon.
Yes, the point is that in Africa, technology has been left for the male gender for a long time. But it's interesting now, we see a number of women tech leaders emerging. And so, for instance, at our end, what we've done is that if we are doing tech workshops, we try to get female tech people to lead and to teach, because in the past, we realized that we have a program called Code for Girls. And at some point realized that we're using all males to do the teaching, and we're like, we are not helping them. They need to get mentors that they could look up to, because the community itself is going to discourage them that that is not for females. But if you can get people put at the forefront who are females, then they have an example to follow.
Yeah.
And I think that for some women who are probably married or have kids, we need to also structure it in a way that can accommodate the condition, because we're having a program that was focusing on providing basic digital skills to women in businesses. And we needed to get some people that would be around so that those that come with kids, at least they can support them by taking the kids when necessary, when they are doing an activity or having to do a presentation. And if all these conducive atmosphere is not created for them, then it's difficult for them to participate. So yes, we need to be very inclusive, and that should be done intentionally, because women have their special needs, just like men have their special needs, but only that for a long time, programs have been structured to suit the male gender, and that's quite unfortunate.
So is that your purpose as well? Well, we are just going back to the question on what do you see as your purpose as a Digital Innovation Hub leader, as Gideon?
Yes, so it's our purpose, and we are intentionally engaging women, facilitators or mentors, and in recruiting participants for digital programs, we also become intentional about reaching out to a lot of women and getting them supported to participate.
Yeah, I really love that, because it's not about just knowing or stating our purpose. It's also about making sure it's embedded and, like you were saying, intentional in everything that we are doing. We are iterating. You're saying we had this program that we were trying to train women to code, but we only had male, and we had to, learn from that and change. And I really love that message, that purpose has to be active and visible in our work. Gospat, what do you see as your purpose as a Digital Innovation Hub leader?
Sorry, hey, unmute. I think in terms of purpose, about enabling the wider ecosystem, and I realize, obviously that's tied to specific kind of target, I guess, areas we want to focus on, but playing our role as an enabler. So wherever possible, seeking wider partnerships. Now there is obviously, there can be a bit of a competitive element here, especially when funding is limited. But I think it's having a commitment to that, the support of a flourishing ecosystem. And the support of a flourishing ecosystem ultimately requires many actors. There is space for everyone, even if it doesn't feel like that sometimes. But that means seeking partnerships, obviously reaching out to those who currently don't have a voice. And like Gideon mentioned, that could be women specifically. Maybe even, in the UK, it could be women of color, for example, women from perhaps underrepresented groups. And also playing our role as a convener. And a convener, I don't mean necessarily that means hosting a formal conference where you get together and, you know, you have a big agenda, but almost using your, it could be convening your community, convening your, you know, convening other hubs. There was a program I saw by another hub. I can't remember where it was based, but it was called, they set up something called the Bootstrap School. And that made me laugh slightly because they set up the program in a sense, in a reaction to a lack of private investment in their region. They're like, no one invests privately. If someone has money, it's either in a bank or it's in something hard, like a hard asset, like, you know, a factory where they built a house. Like no one, so they realized that that's unlikely to change for a generation because the government hasn't liberalized financial services in their region or country. And I just thought that was interesting. They have an awareness. So all of our innovators fund their own businesses. So let's create something which is all about bootstrapping, you know, whereas, you know, if you go to California, you know, everyone's talking about VC funding, and, you know, for all the digital innovation hub leaders, like for most of you, there's no venture capital funding to speak of, but that's unfortunately the normal, if you understand that. We were all measured by some very strange kind of outcomes which may apply to us. But yeah, convener, I think, sorry, rambled a bit, but being a convener is ultimately, I think, is all about kind of being a purpose-driven hub. Whereas the opposite of being a convener is to do it by yourself. And I think that is a very different, very, very different model.
I think you also raised an important point about how much context matters. So when you were sharing, like Qatar, money is not a problem, it's everywhere, but no one is incentivized to innovate because there's just not enough problems, I guess, to solve. Or,
yeah.
You know,
there's no pain.
Yeah, and then you were saying, you know, in an environment where there's not enough funding, you know, these guys set up Bootstrap School because they understood their context well. In, you know, California, it's all about, you know, chasing that VC funding. So I think for me, the key takeaway is, even as we think about sustainability and impact as digital hub leaders, we need to think the context in which we are operating in and being very, very aligned to that. Because I also think, particularly now, and maybe Gideon, you can comment on this, you know, Africa is in a lot of the headlines now when it comes to VC funding. And I think that sitting here reading TechCrunch or whatever, you can imagine that there's just billions flowing on the streets, you know, and yet it's quite a small group of companies, group of people that are receiving this funding, you know, like when you break down to how many startups or individuals have actually accessed this funding compared to the number of startups and innovators on the continent, it's tiny. So I think it's not losing sight of that and sort of buying into the hype to really say, like, we need to build relevant programs, relevant support. What do you think, Gideon?
Yes, that is very important because, and I think that it comes back to just sitting there and being program implementers for corporate institutions, or just going in for any fund and running any program without considering what is really relevant for your community. And so it happens most of the time that you see, you know, innovation hubs actively running programs, but what are the outputs? What are the impacts? And so if we can focus on really delivering what the startups in our communities really need to thrive, then definitely we are going to have most of them positioned for investment or becoming investor ready. Other than that, you get investors approaching and you look at the criteria they have. And when you consider your startups that you have in your community, none of them measure up. So what we do specifically is that as a hub, we look at the expectations of the various financing models available. And then we look within our community and see who of them can we support to get to meet these standards at what point. And if they allow themselves, then we guide them, we mentor them, coach them until they're able to meet those standards. And I think until all hubs begin to do that, we are not going to be productive at the end of the day and be able to position ourselves for such funding.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm really enjoying this conversation. I know we could go on, but we are running out of time. I still haven't had anyone, I don't know if I've missed something in the chat. Anyone from the audience, any questions? Somebody's shared their purpose, which is great. Anyone else want to share their purpose? I'll read this one. This is from Steve Little from Tishwana University. Steve says his purpose is working towards a self-sustaining fund for priming startups by STEM students who are creating their own employment opportunities for themselves and their generation. Really, really well put, Steve. I think that's just a really great purpose statement. Is there anyone else who would like to share their purpose as a digital innovation hub leader? Please feel free, or if there's any questions as well from the audience.
You know, can I say, you know, purpose in this field, I think, is important because there are no kind of quick wins. Sorry, I'm going to use football, right, as an example, because I watch. You know, if your team is not top of the league, you have like a 10-year plan. Like, unless you can get a billionaire to fund your sports team to take you to the top, you kind of have to have a plan. And I think what you mentioned at the start, like, you don't get in this to be rich. So you're almost working for you understand that the foundations you put in right now are going to benefit people in 5 years' time. And just to talk about what, you know, I think someone put in the chat around working, I'm not sure who that is, working towards a self-sustaining fund for priming startups. Yeah. And I think it's important that starts today, you know, but we recognize, you know, there are some structural issues because I always get this thing, why don't we just give up? You know, and no one here in the room is going to give up because you're all here. But I definitely think purpose is the fuel, hopefully, that gets us through these times where we realize that maybe our vision won't come to life in the next 5 years, but it's going to be important that we put the foundations in now.
Yeah, and we've got another person who's, I think Unai puts in their purpose as well. I'd just love to read that out. That young people in Njombe find a community to create social and environmental impact while they develop personally and satisfy their needs. Really, really great. Really some really good purpose there. And I love that, like we said, we're trying to combine both. How do we get our purpose guiding us, but how do we sustain and remain alive, keep our organizations alive so that we can fulfill this purpose in the long term? That's really the trick. I don't think it's a question that, I mean, we've learned a lot and shared today. It's not a question that we will, you know, answer. Like Gospata said, it's a long-term game, right? But hopefully conversations like this, continuing to have conversations like this as hub leaders, as entrepreneurship support providers. Another one's come in. This is amazing. At Wizia Academy, our purpose is to enable economic opportunities for African youth and businesses through digital innovation and enterprise development. Amazing. I don't know if we moved on too quickly from it, but are there any comments or questions around the sustainability bit? Have any of you have any examples or innovative ways that you are doing to sustain yourselves as you pursue this purpose? So Gideon, for example, shared with us an example earlier about how they strategically took on a certain location because they knew that would bring in some revenue that can cover the costs for providing support to startups and you know, the cost of their team. Does anyone have like an innovative way that they have found that they can share with us, for all of us to learn about sustaining your activities? There's a hand raised from Spencer. Please go ahead.
Hi, hello. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Yeah, I work with Wizia Academy, and for us, our focus has been on digital entrepreneurship and digital skills. So one of the things that we are doing is we are focusing on building capacity of students in particular to be able to make some money from the digital space. So one challenge that we have in Ghana is that most students, especially in the tertiary level, go to school just to learn. And we feel that that's a time that they can explore their talent and their skills. And so we have a program that we are running with a number of universities in Ghana, and we are teaching them basic things. So for instance, how to remove a background of a picture, how to take advantage of Fiverr platform to be able to make some money and all. And then we also have a platform that we have built called eJobs for Africa. And the whole goal is that we should get these young people to start using their talent and skills to make some revenue even before they graduate, so that by the time they graduate from school, they don't necessarily have to depend on the system for employment. And that.
Thank you so much. We lost you a little bit there at the end, but I think we got a lot of that. Thanks very much. We have another purpose statement that's come in from Rebecca Nanono, who I believe is my sister from Uganda, because I think I know that name. At SheTech Hive, we ensure Gawa girls and women are ahead to self-sustain. We have incorporated some revenue generating activities such as the sale of study devices. That's brilliant. So she's combined both their purpose and also shared a bit about what they're doing to generate revenue to sustain themselves. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for sharing. Is there anyone else that has any question or example to share learnings from them, from their experience balancing purpose and sustainability as a digital innovation hub or entrepreneur support organization? I usually try and give a bit more time on online platforms, because sometimes somebody may be trying to speak and they're failing to unmute or something like that. So please, if there is any question, please do let us know. Otherwise, I'll ask just for us to conclude, what is your, I guess, final words to everybody, Gospat and Gideon, around balancing sustainability and purpose as a digital innovation hub leader? Any last advice, like a golden nugget, basically, something that you want people to leave with today, top of their mind? Feel free to start, either of you. Who'd like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'd say that the purpose is important that everyone understands, because the purpose is ultimately going to guide you through the harder times. But that also needs to be married to a pragmatism. So you go for, that does need to meet a pragmatism, and pragmatism is ultimately getting beyond survival. I think once you've reached that point, even if it is just a few months runway, to then to think longer term, because wherever you get funding today will always change, always. And I can see it from my end. I can see where the priorities are. So always purpose, being clear on that as a team, but also further marrying that to pragmatism, having the right person in place who's going to lead business development, who shouldn't be just the leader, but also ensuring where are the opportunities and what context you operate in. What can be done in Johannesburg can't easily be replicated in Accra or London or wherever and such.
Amazing, thank you. And Gideon?
Yes, and for me, we should have purposes that we have capacity to fulfill. It shouldn't be mere vision beyond our capacities. So that is very important to look at. And then when we map out our purpose, we should stay true to it, very committed, because there are a lot of opportunities that are going to sidetrack our attention. But let's keep our focus and rather, like Gosbert said earlier on, if we can have business development people who are out there ensuring that they are creating opportunities or finding opportunities for the purpose and impact we want to create, that is going to be useful. And then we can have success stories that we can hail to attract more support.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. Before I let Gideon and Gospat go, we are not yet finished. We need to do a bit of close off, so please don't leave yet. I'd also like us to take a family photo. So I know a lot of us have had our cameras off, but social media is the way we all connect now. We have people from all over the world. We've seen some of the countries on here. It would be nice for us to exist in a digital space together as a family. So I'll just kindly ask everyone who can to turn their video on so that we can take a quick photo.
Okay, so are we ready?
Can we, I don't know if I'm seeing the wrong one because I'm only still seeing us pinned up. So I think we need to be unpinned, no?
I can see you, all of you.
You can see everyone. All right, you do it then.
Okay, I can take the photo. So 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
you.
So I'll let Gospat and Gideon go, but like I mentioned, participants, we just need 5 minutes of your time before you all leave. First of all, we would like to hear your key takeaways from this. We have a very short, it will take you about 2 minutes to fill out a survey. Like we saw from Tanya's presentation earlier, this is a part of, it's not a standalone session, it's a part of a whole year of learning, of sessions, capacity building sessions targeted towards digital innovation hub leaders and entrepreneur support providers. So we want to make sure that we are learning, that we are adapting, that we are meeting your needs. We want to hear how this session may have helped you, but also what you want to see in future sessions. So it's so important for us. I kindly urge you to spend the next 2 minutes. We've shared the link in the chat to just fill this out. And then we'll come back after these 2 minutes and we'll close off, and I can leave you with a bit more information on where to find the next upcoming events, how to connect with us, etc. So just really, you know, request from our side to fill out that form that has been shared in the chat right now. And if anyone is done, just type done. So if you need longer than 2 minutes, that's fine. We still have a bit of time till we were meant to close. Thank you, Paul, for submitting. Thank you very much. Is everyone else done, or do we need a couple more minutes? All right, I've been asked another minute. Just give me a thumbs up when you're done, and then we'll know so we can move on. Steve, it's good to see you.
Struggling through the form at the moment.
Okay, we should probably move on now and close. I hope everyone's had the chance to fill that out. Again, if you still need to continue after, please do, but please don't forget to submit. Could I get the slide just sharing our contact details so that we can have information for everybody? So again, thank you very much to all of you for joining us. From us at ATBN, who've been organizing this. We are, like you saw earlier, one of the partners of the AfriConEU project, and you can find us at africatbn.com to learn more about our work and all that we are doing to support inclusive digital transformation in Africa, running acceleration programs, building capacity of ecosystem actors, and connecting and building synergies, knowledge sharing between Europe and Africa. You can learn more about us there. You can also find out more about AfriConEU. Can I have the next slide, please? So AfriConEU is a project that's leading and bringing together all these different sessions. And you might, if you joined early, you might have seen in Tanya's presentation, there is a whole series of workshops happening over the next, until the end of 2023, actually. We're around targeted at, us, innovation leaders, entrepreneurship support providers, to learn from each other. Today, we've been talking about balancing sustainability and impact. There is other sessions on, building, strategy, business development, technology transfer, exploring new markets. There's networking opportunities to connect with other hub leaders in Europe. Today you met Gospats and a few others as well. So please do go on to AfriConEU, subscribe to the newsletter, follow on social media so you can keep notified of the upcoming activities. I think as you join this event, we'll also have asked you if you're willing to be added to our mailing list to inform you of activities. So if you have, then those will be sent to you. But from myself, from the AfriConEU team, from the ATBN team, it's just to say thank you very much, and we hope to see you at the next session.